there's a woman who has, and we found actually multiple other people that are doing this too, has created a whole consulting service where she coaches people on how to get through qualitative screeners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam, and I am a CEO of RealEye. We are here today with Kerry Hecht, CEO and the founder of 10K Ecosystem. 10K spaces, 10K humans, 10K voices, 10K questions, 10K stories, and more. Each company is built around the idea that things can and should be done differently. Hello, Kerry. How are you today?
I'm just fine, thanks. It is nice to join you.
Super. I'm excited to have you here. So can you tell me a bit more about the 10K ecosystem and why did you start it?
Yes. So we rebranded about, I would say, so about 3 months ago, we did our final rebranding. Prior to that, we were called Echo. And then we realized that there were about 4 or 5 different Echoes in the market research space. So we shifted to the 10K brand. I wish that I could claim that there was some magical reason for switching to that name in particular, but it really just popped into my head, right? So I was sitting there watching TV one time, and I think I was watching a sci-fi show, and so the name, it first started with like 1,000 humans, and then it was like, no, 10K humans, and initially it was 10,000 humans, and then we decided because the company itself does so many different things. So we have the participant-facing brand, which previously was known as HiveMind, and so we decided that would be 10K Voices, and that encompasses the piece of technology that we built that is our gig economy platform, which is how research participants ultimately interact with us. We have a previously what we just called spaces. We're now calling 10K spaces, and I'm actually in our space in Austin right now, which is a like a creative space and a sort of home style focus group facility. And then 10K humans is our services arm, which is obviously the services behind all the field management and project management and the things that you would need. And then we have sub brands to that, which would be 10K Causes, which is our charitable division. So where we do pro bono work for charities around the world. 10K Insights, which is our insights arm. We support a lot of tech companies through the work that we do there. And so it just keeps growing. We've got, 10K Verdicts, which is like a digital mock jury solution. So we're trying not to go like too overboard with the 10Ks, although, when I list them all out, we might be getting close to that. But I thought that the number has a lot of meaning in a lot of different cultures. They say it's like 10,000 days to become a true master at something.
I heard that.
So we liked it, like it stuck. And what's been interesting is to hear how people have started talking about it, because we were curious as to whether or not they would say 10,000 naturally or they would say 10K. And it's defaulted to 10K, which we like. So, it's nice and short and simple. And so it's been really exciting. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback, and it's definitely been re-energizing.
Super. Thanks for sharing this story about the naming and the branding. The naming is always exciting. Like it's once, maybe not for all, but once for a very long time. So it needs to be neat and fit into.
Well, I mean, it's funny too how so when we initially had our first name, Echo, I thought I was being very clever, and I remember thinking, wow, it's really strange that there's not other companies in the space that are named this, because it's such an obvious market research name. And then I realized that I was getting all these Amazon packages delivered to my house, and they all had the Amazon's marketing tape on it for the Echo Dot at the time. And I think that I really truly was just like subliminally influenced by the packages that were getting delivered to me. And then, like I said, it turns out there were, in fact, about 4 other companies in the space that had that name. But I thought it was really funny, because I was like, oh my God, I'm so clever. And then, a package comes and I'm like, oh, I'm not clever at all. I'm just very easily led.
So I wonder what was in the scientific show with the 10K you watched.
Someday I'm going to come across it, right? Someday I'm going to be like, oh, that's what it is. But
Probably.
I remember very specifically, I was watching television and it popped into my head, which means it could not have been an independent thought.
Okay,
You know?
interesting. Very cool. So you operate a lot with humans, with fieldings, with panel.
Yeah.
You're providing humans. So what is the hardest thing about fielding? Do you have any frauds and
Yeah.
while fielding for market research studies online?
Yeah, so we do what we refer to as an active recruitment model, and always have, and that model continues to evolve, right? So it initially was that we would go out into the wild and try to find people in a way that validated the behavior that we were looking for.
Hmm.
So if we were looking for we needed to do hyper localized recruiting, we would advertise on Nextdoor. If we were going to do looking for runners, we would infiltrate runners groups. If we were looking for gamers, we would go to Twitch, right? So our model has never been one where we relied on the database. Now that has changed slightly, and it's changed for a couple of different reasons, but fraud is one of those reasons. So there comes a point, I think, in any company's development of their database where it's almost like you can't keep the fraudsters out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen some really wild things, right? We've seen things where, because we do a lot of what we do is qualitative, so we have a lot more budget than you do for like quantitative research, and we require obviously a lot more from participants for qualitative, but they also get paid a lot more, right?
Sure.
So we have seen things that are people photoshopping their IDs
Mm.
badly, I might add, right? So you see they're not even like they don't use the same font. We stumbled across someone referred us to this, but that we've been posting a lot about it on LinkedIn, but it's the paid for your say kind of scandal where there's a woman who has, and we found actually multiple other people that are doing this too, has created a whole consulting service where she coaches people on how to get through qualitative screeners. And so all of the things that we do, like we actually do check IDs. We require video articulation questions that are
Mm.
topically relevant. We do, photo verifications and all of these kinds of things. So you get into this woman's channel where she is literally showing how to beat all of those systems, and it goes as far as they've created this community where they share pictures of products
Hmm.
for other people to use. So if they said, well, look, I need you to use Dove soap, for example, but does anyone have a picture? And this is like a Discord channel,
Hmm.
right? Does anyone have a picture of Dove soap that's in their shower that they could send to me so that I can submit that to the focus group? So we, obviously this is very hard to keep ahead of. And, quantitative research has its own whole other separate fraud, which, is all, the bots and the bot farms and everything
Hmm.
like that. So trying to beat that on a technical level is, I think, almost impossible.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we have removed the ability for people that engage with us to register in a database to take part in a project. So we've moved to a model where we do intercepts, which like literally old school style. You want unacculturated Hispanics, we find an unacculturated Hispanic person who lives in a neighborhood who is willing to go stand in front of a grocery store and intercept people. And that obviously works for surveys and it works for pre-recruiting for qualitative. Or we hire networkers in the same way that you would hire someone for DoorDash or Uber Eats or
Hmm.
TaskRabbit or something like that. So they get paid based on the qualified people that they refer to our projects.
Hmm.
And there's a rating system. So if they do a terrible job, they get a low rating and they get kicked out of the system. And so we've built into the way that we incentivize people finding finding the correct people. And then the targeting that we use to find the networkers and the interceptors is targeting people who are already gig workers. So it's not necessarily that we're not targeting people to like make money in focus groups. We don't talk about market research at all. We are looking to hire the same people that you would want to bring you your food, or that you would invite into your home to bring a set of shelves. So we're changing the model completely, but that's as a response to, number one, the fraud, and number two, I think that we should find more interesting ways for people to engage with our industry, right? I think we kind of have lost sight of that. So those are the things that we're doing, because I don't know how you beat it. You can have all the fraud protections in the world, and these people are like, it's a gain to them and an income.
Yeah. What you said about the forums, people asking other people to make photos, that's really amazing. I haven't
It's
heard
horrifying.
about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think it's not necessarily an unexpected consequence of the systems that we have created, right? Because we say in other, I've said this a lot, but it always bears repeating. We created a value proposition decades ago that was join our database to make money. And that's whether it's a panel or whether it's a qualitative database, that is quite literally what we told them to join the database for. And in qualitative research, you have really difficult, stringent recruiting requirements, which are a combination of things that are relevant to the project and a combination of things to weed out people that take part in a lot of research, right? So, which I think is flawed, that part of it, because it's like, look, I have cats, I brush my teeth, I drive a car, I wear glasses. If I like to participate in research and I'm being honest, why shouldn't I be able to talk about all of those things if I'm a good participant? One could even make the argument that people that participate in a lot of focus groups know the drill, right? They know to show up on time. They know to be articulate. They know, and there's a value to that. Like if I was inviting someone to come into my house to build shelves, would I be happier with the outcome if this person was always building shelves? Probably, right? So we take them through all these screeners, but then we cut them off from participating in research as much as they want to. So we've not delivered on the reason that we've invited them to join our database. And then for quantitative panels, obviously they're making pennies on the dollar. So that we're not delivering on that promise either. So it's like the model has to change. And someone's got to change it. It's not going to be them.
Sure.
They're trying to change it by cheating.
So it should be done differently.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We've got to think about it differently. We've got to engage differently. And we can't put the burden on the participants to change it in a way that makes sense. It has to make sense for everybody, right? And right now it doesn't make sense for anyone.
Yeah, but you also provide panelists for quantitative research.
Oh yeah.
So what are like the best methods to prevent frauds? Like
intercepts.
I don't know.
Quite literally, go out into the world and talk to people. So get offline. We can deploy interceptors, and again, this is where it becomes scalable. So if we have a small sample size, we can put, I don't know, 10 interceptors in strategic spots around the country, and we give them like 4-hour shifts. If we need 1,000 interviews, we can deploy 20 or 30 of them, right? And this is quite literally how people used to do it. We also have gone back to doing Caddy. We've gone back to doing random digit dialing, because there's software that exists that makes that really easy to do remotely, so you don't need a call center to do it. So, if you think about the old school ways that people used to do this, it would literally be going out and talking to people and going out and doing it online. We also use networkers to get into different groups. So this becomes a very scalable approach.
But what I'm hearing is that all the methods that were invented within the internet, like online surveys, online, like we do provide set of tools for running online, like webcam eye tracking studies and so on.
Yeah.
So you're saying that this needs to shift somehow, because the people behind all these data points that are being collected these days on a daily basis, thousands of data, are simply corrupted with people who are not honest about participating.
And
at some level, obviously.
On some level, yeah. I wouldn't say, it's never an always situation, right? And even with what I'm talking about, so we had a project recently where we hired some networkers, and we found out very quickly that they were posting open links on Craigslist, which I don't know if Craigslist has the same reputation in Poland as it does in the United States, but it's like it's garbage, right? And so we immediately were seeing traffic coming in that didn't make sense, right? If people were actually doing what they said that they were supposed to be doing, which is going out into the wild and finding people. It was like all one source. It had been picked up by a bot farm. Someone posted on Craigslist and a bot farm picked it up. And so you could see the stuff coming in. So there's nothing that is going to be foolproof. And I think that there's room for lots of different ways of solving this problem. Ours is just the way that makes sense for us, right? So I would never suggest that all panel is garbage. What I would say is there is a significant amount of traffic that comes from either the affiliate services or people that have gotten into panels that makes it really, really hard to determine who is real and who isn't. Now, even within the panel model, there are ways that you can get around this. So like when we've tried, playing with panel for qualitative, we do things like embedding video questions. You see a 90% drop off rate when you put a video question in. Why? Right? So I would suggest there's a couple of things. Like there's the panel has been hit the hardest by bots, but they also are the ones that have the most problematic structures when it comes to compensating participants. But that's not, that's also not necessarily just driven by them. So, for things like eye tracking, obviously, if you get to a point, you're getting to a point where you have to see a person, right? And so that would imply that you would need to do a pre-recruit, and that pre-recruit would have a certain amount of vetting involved. And so like anything that's going to involve any kind of conversation or video where you literally have to see the person is going to ensure that they are at least people for now anyway, right? Until you get someone that's figured out how to make AI avatars that can beat the system. But I think that there's that's an important distinction. And I don't think that there's I don't want anyone to think that I would say that our methods are 100% foolproof and anyone else's are 100% garbage. It's just, this is what we have found for us that makes the most sense. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, of course, there are panel providers, and the quality of the data can differ between them. I remember that 6-7 years ago when we were starting RealEye, we were plugged. We were trying to attach the Mechanical Turk as the so-called random eyes. We just needed some people with eyes to look at some content. We were not even, we were not interested in what type of demographics. Nothing was actually interesting for us. We called it random eyes, but we had so many scams on this network. Then we switched to the one called Prolific some 2 years afterwards. And to be honest, until now, we are pretty satisfied with it. Therefore, I just had a very similar interview with Jonathan Sheldrake, and he was also telling me that whenever there are panel providers that people can enter their own information by their own, they can select that they speak any language, they know they know all the instruments, they know everything. So, and then the pre-fielding allows them to participate because they know what to check. So having these people checked just like you're doing it, like this is the biggest shield you can have protecting you from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but it's you're 100% right, and it's also like, people are going to cheat the system, right? I mean, if you think about where we are as a culture outside of just the industry with identity fraud and credit card fraud and things like this, right? There's big money in that, right? And this is fraud in an online world. There's a lot of people that have a lot of incentive to perfect those models and to become as tricky as possible, right? And the cybersecurity firms are doing. I just did an interview with a lady who's like a cybersecurity expert, and the amount of things that they have to do and that they go through in order to protect identity for credit cards and any kind of online behavior and your Twitter account getting hacked and like all of these kinds of things. So if you think about about where we are kind of as an industry in the scale of things when you talk about online banking and online shopping and all of these kinds of things. Like, there's a lot of people putting a lot of money into creating safe online environments who are still struggling to do it, right? It's they're constantly battling this. So I think that it's important to keep perspective when it's like, look, if Deutsche Bank can't crack it, is it really that surprising that we haven't been able to either? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, it's going to be a constant battle, and there is a do the best you can. But if multiple people are coming at it from different angles, trying to solve the problem, we as an industry will be better for that.
Nice. I like when you say that the game is on, like it's a
Yeah.
constant,
Yeah,
it's
it
a
is.
race. It's a
Right.
race.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know so many people who have like a friend of mine just got a letter in the mail that Chase Bank had denied him a credit card because his ID couldn't be verified. And that's how he found out that someone is aiming to steal his identity. Right. And so, if you think about, there's no system in place unless you've got identity lock and things like that to even protect you against that.
Yeah.
You're just going through the world, right, minding your own business, and that kind of stuff pops up. So, to think about people creating fraud for something that costs pennies on a dollar, I mean, yeah, like you said, game on. But who's solving it? I don't know. Not me. Yeah.
Kerry, moving to the next question. So, have you observed any trends, changes in the market research? And let's add on the top of this, how long are you engaged with market research? And have you observed any
Oh,
trends in the time that you are related with
so
the
I'm
topic?
a lifer, right? I started I'm 51 now, and I started when I was 18. And so my first job was on the phones in market research, like literally doing the random digit dialing that we were talking about. So I worked in a phone center, I've worked in a focus group facility, I've managed a focus group facility, I've been a qual researcher, a quant researcher, which I think has put me in a position why starting my own company was a viable option, right? Because I've done almost everything that you
Which one you
possibly can.
preferred, the qual or quant?
It depends. So I really like the reading things like home use journals when people are like bring products into their homes. I really love talking to people, but I find solace in the numbers, right? So like when back in the day, processing data tables meant that you were literally getting a printout that was as big as a phone book, which you may not even have ever seen, which is like it's like a stack of papers this big. And, your first job is to go in and check and make sure that the math is right. And then you go through and you can see the story playing out in the numbers, and it was literally a very tactile experience, which I personally liked very much. So I would say that I really enjoy both, and I think that there is value in both. And I think that one of the things that used to be the case, which is not so much anymore, which is a trend in the right direction, I think, is qual and quantitative researchers and research, even within brand, corporate departments, would be kept very separate, right? So it was like you had a qual research department and a quant research department, or you had a qual team or a quant team within a large corporation. And I think that was always a mistake, because those are both pieces of a holistic research program. So I've been around a long time. I've been around from when it was to phone to online. There was no panel companies when I started. Then panel companies going to, market research communities, going to DIY software, and now we're in the AI revolution. So I've seen a lot of different things happen over the life of my career. And I would say I've been particularly excited by all of them. And I think that there is, there's always this talk in our industry about like, and I just saw this, which was really funny, because it's typically it was qualitative research that gets hammered on, right? That it's like with all the new softwares that come out, they're like, the focus group is dead. Like everyone's been trying to kill the focus group for like literally 1,000 years. And it never will die. It shouldn't die. It's a great, useful tool. And now you're getting to the place where it's like surveys are dying or surveys are dead. there's an aspect of it that is like, okay, well, if we want to, there's parts of our models that are dying, like we were talking about, and they should, but surveys will never be dead, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that there tends to be a long it's like there's two counter forces, right? So there's like an alarmist nature to these big changes, which I think is never really warranted, right? That it's like this is an evolution like any other, and all of these tools are just more tools in our toolbox. But then we also have a despite the fact that we're an industry based in trends, we also have a very slow adoption rate in our
Mhm.
industry, right? So like we've got people are talking about AI in a way that they're afraid of it, and they shouldn't be, right? We should be embracing this and understanding it, and then making sure that we are advising our clients how to use it, when's the right way to use it. So like I never feel like any of these trends is something that is going to kill even a portion of our industry. I always feel like, come on, folks, like let's get
Mhm.
on board. Let's figure out the best way to use it. I mean, like I take a very strong opinion on things like norms databases, which have been a staple for our industry since the cows came home. I and I look at that and I'm like, look, you've got a 45-minute questionnaire about a 30-second advertisement. And I don't care if you've been doing that since 1950. That is shit methodology,
Mhm.
right? And you can tie it back to norms databases that were shit methodology for the past 4 decades. Doesn't change what I'm saying,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's like I'm all for incorporating things that make sense to the way people are presently oriented in the world, and in a way that we're talking to people in a way that makes sense to them. Like you can't tell me that there's a 20-year-old out there that interacts with the world by taking a 45-minute survey. I mean,
Mhm.
what 30-second advertisement has that 20-year-old seen recently?
Yeah.
Firstly,
Mhm. That's
let's
that's
start
also a good question.
there, right? Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that like we as an industry should be constantly evolving to make sure that we're talking to people in a way that makes sense to them, regardless of what we have done
Mhm.
historically.
Cool. Very, very nice. Thanks for thanks for
Sorry.
answering the trends. No, no, very, very, very cool. Thanks for taking us to this slightly vision of trends in market research. I appreciate it. I like the part when you said that you've been through all the revolutions. I can imagine what a revolution. At the very beginning, I thought that the internet was a huge revolution. Therefore, probably spreading the internet was not that fast, so it did not change the market research rapidly. It was just like a
It did. Yeah. It
like.
did. It did. But I remember the first time that I came across Bad Panel.
Mhm.
And I worked for one of the big market research companies that owns a lot of smaller market research companies. And we were forced to use that company's panel.
Mhm.
And I remember even at the time, and you're looking at like 2000, maybe 2000. I thought, it was probably like 2005, right?
Mhm.
And I remember thinking at the time, this company's panel is terrible, but we were forced to use them because they were owned by the same parent company. So it was like,
Mhm.
regardless of what the best solution was, we had to use this company. And that was very close to when I decided that I wanted to quit being a quant researcher, because it was just, in my mind, even then it was garbage. It was
Mhm.
like, we know that this is bad and
Mhm.
that you get weird results. And, so like, because even with the norms databases, it's like, you can't, the things would behave completely differently because the sample wasn't right.
Yeah.
And so even then, I mean, and that's 20 years ago now, it was bad, but we were forced to use, what can
Mhm.
I say? I mean, it was bad then, it's bad now.
Mm. Actually, I recall a similar story. I was once, when I was like a kid in the primary school, I was engaged into a focus group, and I
Yeah.
remember our teacher collected a group of pupils, and she said before the fielding. Before like the primary questionnaire, like, hey guys, just say that you drink a lot of juice of this company brand. So It was
Yeah.
like totally bullshit afterwards.
Yeah. It's so
So
terrible.
we were
Yeah.
like, I drink this juice every day, and they took us. And I remember that I was sitting there, I was taking on the incentives, I was feeling
Right.
good. I was giving some candy, sweets, juices to taste. Therefore,
And you got
that
out of
was totally
class, right?
biased. Sorry?
That in of itself, did you get out of class too, right?
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
only incentives. And I remember,
Sold.
and now, like, I don't know, I'm 37. I was probably like 10 years old, so 25-ish years to
Yeah.
the future. And now I can see that it was such a like that was just a bullshit type
It's
of
problematic.
research,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
problematic at best.
happening all the time. So it
Sure.
matters. The
Yeah.
the the the, the fielding matters really
Yeah, it
dramatically.
does. I mean, I had a conversation this morning about screening qualitative participants, and I was
Screening,
talking to,
that's the word.
yeah, it was like, so I talked to a lady, and we were talking about algorithms in qualitative, and we were looking, we're talking about needing to find people who are into like natural health products, but then they were going to throw some algorithms in. And so one of the things that I said was like, look, when you start adding in algorithms or multiple algorithms, you often end up getting rid of all of the people that you would actually want to talk to, right? And so I'm actually a huge advocate for switching qualitative screening away from surveys to conversational screeners. So, especially given the way that technology has evolved right now. So, like, I could ask you some open ended questions, probably no more than five, to find out what kind of juice you drink and how much you like it and how often you drink it, in a way that would prevent you from being able to cheat unless someone did predispose you to the answers, right? Whereas now we have a scenario where people can just guess the responses. And, even with the rescreening, if they're savvy, they know to keep track of the questions, the way the questions they answered before. So if you just, instead of saying which of the following juice brands do you drink, you say, tell me about the different brands of juice that you drink, and let you answer that question. And then you say, okay, great, of those juice brands that you just mentioned, which one is your favorite and why? Okay, you said that brand X was your favorite. How often do you drink it?
Yeah.
Okay, you said you drink it this many times. What are those occasions? Tell me, like, what you're doing when you drink those juices. And boom, that was what, 4 questions?
Yeah.
And we know whether or not you are doing what we want you to do.
I can already imagine the AI type of solutions, like
Yeah.
language models doing this
Right.
conversations
Right.
with
Yeah.
humans.
Well, I mean, we didn't even, you don't even really need a language model to do that, right? Like you could do that. You can do that with, programming survey software, just with open ends, and
Just
like,
ask different
yeah,
questions than just
right. You
choose.
just phrase it slightly differently, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if we did that as like a consistent thing. So what we have done is that we now have a pre-screener that we do that in. So that, and you can program on the back end so that it picks up keywords. And so if it picks up the keywords, then and only then do they get taken to the actual screener. So instead of doing screener from the client rescreening, we do pre-screener screener. And that way it's like, and they don't even see the screener if they don't say what they need to say open-endedly in that first one. And so that's like just one of the things that you can do to prevent fraud, right? But it's like, if you just start thinking about it logically, there are things that you can do.
Don't say too much about it, because perhaps someone who is who wants to cheat will
Right. Oh
learn
yeah.
a lot.
Right. Yeah,
will
I
learn
know.
from this interview. So
Except
now
for
they're
the
taking
poor.
notes, like, okay,
Yeah.
so look at the keywords.
Right.
Okay, Kerry, thanks. Sorry, one last question. Any advice to those who are starting their careers in market research?
Yeah. So
How
I
about
would say firstly, I would say welcome. This is a
them?
great industry. I've been at this for a long time. I am as excited about my job every day as I was on day one. It's a community of people that are welcoming, warm, empathetic, eager to share their knowledge, eager to share their experience, and want you to succeed. And I don't know of many industries that is the case. So I am like, this has
Sure.
been the greatest thing. Like I love my career. I would say stay open to possibilities. I would say be experimental. I would say one of the things that I do to stay excited is I get demos from companies all the time. So even if they're not necessarily something that I would use, I love to hear people to pitch me their new ideas and the things that they're working on because it keeps me excited. And I would say involve yourself in community initiatives, involve yourself in industry-wide initiatives, and travel the world.
Okay. Thanks, Kerry. It was really nice talking to
My
you.
pleasure.
So, have a good rest of the day then.
Thanks, you too.